After years of a desperate search, the missing girl finally returns home. But something about her isn't right. At first, there is relief, a wave of emotions, tears, embraces, the long-awaited moment a family had prayed for. The posters, the vigils, the years of uncertainty, all seem to culminate in this one miraculous moment. But the questions begin almost immediately. She stands at the threshold of the home she vanished from, but there's an unease, something almost imperceptible, gnawing at the edges of reality. The people who knew her best can't quite put their finger on it. There's a stiffness in her interactions, a hesitation in her words. The past she should remember in vivid detail seems foggy, disjointed, filled with gaps she struggles to explain. There are stories she tells, but they don't fit together neatly. They shift slightly every time she speaks. And then, the most unsettling thing of all, the eyes of a mother who has searched relentlessly for years, now staring into the face of the daughter she longed for, and finding something missing. An absence where familiarity should be. A coldness where warmth once resided. The town rejoices, yet whispers begin. People recall the way she disappeared. The way the case slowly faded from headlines. Some remember the suspects, the theories, the wild rumors that gripped the town for years. But none of them prepared for this. None of them thought they would have to wonder if the girl who returned was truly the one they lost. Or if something else had taken her place. If you love unraveling true crime mysteries, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more stories like this. The disappearance of 14-year-old Emily Lawson in 2012 shocked the small town of Pine Creek. A bright, joyful girl, Emily vanished without a trace on her way home from school. It was a route she had walked countless times, a familiar stretch of road lined with small houses and towering oak trees, where neighbors sat on porches and children played freely. But that day, something went terribly wrong. She never made it home. No one saw anything unusual, no signs of struggle, no screams, no calls for help. Just an ordinary afternoon that suddenly turned into a family's worst nightmare. Her parents, David and Linda Lawson, were frantic. Emily had never run away before, never even hinted at wanting to leave. She was close to her family, loved her friends, and had big dreams of becoming a veterinarian one day. Within hours of her disappearance, the entire town mobilized. Search parties combed through the wooded areas near her route. Flyers were posted on every street corner. The local news ran her story night after night, pleading for any information. But days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Leads dried up, witnesses faded away, and the case slowly lost momentum. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said Emily had been taken by someone she knew. Others believed she had simply run away, though those who knew her best refused to believe it. As the years passed, new crimes filled the headlines, and Emily's name became just another tragic story buried in the town's past. But for the Lawsons, the pain never lessened. They never stopped searching, never stopped hoping that one day, Emily would walk through their door again. And then, against all odds, she did. But something was wrong. She looked like Emily. She had the same face, the same birthmark on her wrist, the same childhood memories, at least, the ones she could recall. But there were gaps, strange inconsistencies in her story. Her voice was different, her mannerisms slightly off. She hesitated when talking about things she should have remembered instantly. Her favorite foods, the names of childhood pets, the little details that made Emily who she was. And when she hugged her mother for the first time in years, Linda swore she felt something missing. A disconnect. A hollowness behind her daughter's eyes that hadn't been there before. Neighbors were overjoyed at her return, the local news called it a miracle, but within the walls of the Lawson home, quiet doubts began to grow. And when Linda found something hidden in Emily's room, a note, crumpled and hastily shoved beneath the bed, her doubts turned to fear. Because the note contained just 4 words, scribbled in shaky handwriting, "I am not Emily." What happened to Emily Lawson? And if this wasn't her, then who was she? Emily Lawson was once a bright and cheerful teenager, a girl full of life and dreams. But the Emily that returned home was different. Her expressions were muted, her laughter hollow, her presence unsettling. She no longer moved with the confidence she once had, her words carefully chosen, as though rehearsed. Her family struggled to make sense of it. Linda Lawson, Emily's mother, had led the search for years, organizing vigils, speaking to the press, refusing to let her daughter's name be forgotten. But now, she was faced with an impossible question: was this really her child? Robert Lawson, Emily's father, had always been the quiet one, the logical thinker, but even he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He noticed it in the way she interacted with them, the way she avoided certain topics, the way she never seemed fully present. Then there was Aaron, Emily's older brother. He had been 15 when she disappeared, a protective sibling who blamed himself for not walking her home that day. But since Emily's return, Aaron had been distant. Avoiding eye contact, keeping to himself. It was as if he knew something he couldn't say. Detective Laura Kemp had worked on Emily's case from the beginning, a seasoned investigator known for her relentless pursuit of the truth. She had seen families break under the weight of tragedy, had watched hope fade into grief. But she had never seen anything like this. Officer Ben Radcliffe, a local officer who had grown up in Pine Creek, had always felt a personal connection to the case. He had known the Lawsons for years. Seeing Emily return should have been a victory, but it only raised more questions. And then there were the others. Daniel Fry, the reclusive neighbor who had been a person of interest early on, a man with no alibi and a past he never spoke about. Cynthia Harris, Emily's childhood best friend, who had once spoken to the media with tears in her eyes. But now, her behavior was strange. Uneasy glances, forced smiles, nervous laughter. As if she, too, was hiding something. Everyone wanted to believe that Emily had come home. But the truth was much more complicated. And much more terrifying. Emily Lawson was last seen on a crisp autumn afternoon in 2012, walking home from Pine Creek High School. She was 14, bright-eyed, full of life, and loved by nearly everyone in town. She had just finished her volleyball practice, said goodbye to her friends, and headed down the familiar tree-lined road that led to her house. But she never made it home. Her parents reported her missing that same evening when she failed to return for dinner. What started as mild concern quickly turned into full-blown panic. The authorities were contacted, search parties were formed, and within hours, the entire community was out looking for Emily. Flyers were printed with her smiling face, the media picked up the story, and the police launched an intensive investigation. At first, they believed she may have run away, but there was no indication that she had planned to leave. No packed bags, no withdrawn money, no notes left behind. It didn't make sense. Days turned to weeks, then months. The Lawson family lived in torment, hoping every knock on the door was Emily returning home. The search dragged on, but leads grew cold. There were whispers of possible sightings, but none of them led anywhere. Suspicion turned toward those closest to her. Investigators dug into the family's history, questioning their relationships, their routines, looking for something, anything, that could explain what had happened to Emily. Her father, Robert Lawson, was quiet and reserved, a man who kept his emotions in check. Her mother, Sarah, was the face of the search efforts, tirelessly organizing vigils, appearing on news programs, and pleading for her daughter's return. Emily's older brother, Aaron, was interrogated multiple times, but he insisted he had no idea what happened to his sister. Their neighbors were questioned, and one name stood out, Daniel Fry, a reclusive man in his late 40s who lived just 2 blocks away. He had a history of odd behavior, but nothing concrete linked him to Emily's disappearance. Then there was Cynthia Harris, Emily's childhood best friend. Cynthia was devastated at first, but over time, she distanced herself from the case. Some found that strange. Still, there was no evidence to connect her to anything sinister. Years passed. Emily's case went cold. The Lawson family was left in limbo, never able to fully grieve, never able to move forward. The town eventually stopped talking about it. Life continued. The missing flyers faded. The once vivid calls for justice dulled into background noise. And then, just like that, everything changed. On a rainy afternoon, Sarah Lawson opened the front door to find a young woman standing there, shivering, her clothes drenched, her eyes hollow. It was Emily. She was older, thinner, different. Her once vibrant face was gaunt, her expression vacant. She stepped inside slowly, as if unsure whether she belonged there. Her mother collapsed into sobs, pulling her into an embrace. Robert stood frozen, staring at the daughter he had lost, yet here she was, standing before him. Aaron arrived moments later, wide-eyed and speechless. The police were called immediately. Officers arrived, taking statements, trying to make sense of the impossible. Where had she been? Who had taken her? How had she escaped? But Emily didn't have answers. She barely spoke at all. When she did, her words were short, vague, uncertain. She couldn't remember where she had been. She had no recollection of how she got back. Every question was met with hesitation, with silence, with fear. Her story was inconsistent. One moment, she would claim she had been held somewhere dark, the next, she would say she had been wandering alone. Sometimes she acted as if she didn't recognize her own family, hesitating when she spoke their names. She avoided eye contact, flinched at sudden movements. The police pressed for details, but Emily withdrew, curling into herself, unwilling or unable to speak. Something was wrong. Medical examinations revealed she was malnourished but showed no obvious signs of physical abuse. No broken bones, no scars, nothing that could indicate years of captivity. But her psychological state was a different story. She was anxious, jumpy, prone to sudden outbursts. Sometimes, she would stare into space for minutes at a time, completely unresponsive. She refused to sleep with the lights off. She wouldn't go near windows after dark. And most disturbingly, she refused to say where she had been. The town was stunned. The community that once mourned her loss now struggled to celebrate her return. Theories spread like wildfire. Some believed she had been kidnapped and brainwashed. Others thought she had run away and was too ashamed to admit it. A few even speculated that this wasn't Emily at all, that it was someone else entirely, an imposter taking advantage of the family's grief. But DNA tests confirmed her identity. It was Emily Lawson. There was no doubt about that. The real question was, where had she been all these years? And why was she so afraid to talk? After years of a desperate search, the missing girl finally returns home. But something about her isn't right. What dark secrets lie behind her sudden reappearance? If you love unraveling true crime mysteries, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more stories like this. The disappearance of 14-year-old Emily Lawson in 2012 shocked the small town of Pine Creek. A bright, joyful girl, Emily vanished without a trace on her way home from school. For years, her family clung to hope while the community struggled with fear and suspicion. The haunting question remained, what happened to Emily? Her unexpected return only deepened the mystery. Emily Lawson was once a cheerful teenager, now a shell of her former self. Her behavior upon returning raised questions. Her mother, Sarah Lawson, led a relentless search campaign, never giving up hope. Robert Lawson, her father, was stoic yet troubled by his daughter's disappearance. Aaron Lawson, Emily's older brother, harbored his own secrets. Detective Laura Kemp, known for her tenacity and empathy, led the investigation, assisted by Officer Ben Radcliffe, a local officer with personal ties to the Lawson family. Suspicion fell on Daniel Fry, a mysterious neighbor once a person of interest, and Cynthia Harris, Emily's childhood friend, who exhibited odd behavior after Emily's return. Emily's last known whereabouts and the events leading up to her disappearance were carefully examined. Initial search efforts brought the community together, leading to a media frenzy. But as time passed, public interest waned, and the case went cold. Clues suggested Emily didn't simply run away, and vague evidence pointed to possible foul play. Her family struggled through years of despair, clinging to any lead. Then, out of nowhere, Emily showed up on her family's doorstep, looking older, weary, and distant. She didn't remember where she had been, and her story was inconsistent. Subtle hints of fear marked her behavior, and she refused to discuss her past. Detective Kemp reopened the case, interviewing Emily and uncovering strange inconsistencies. Forensic tests revealed shocking evidence. Emily's DNA had changed, pointing to possible identity issues. Emily's erratic behavior and hidden clues in her belongings only deepened the mystery. Cynthia Harris's suspicious actions suggested she knew more than she let on. Neighbors reported seeing a girl resembling Emily in the woods during her absence, but every lead seemed to end in eerie coincidences or dead ends. Public speculation grew: was the girl who returned really Emily? After years of a desperate search, the missing girl finally returns home. But something about her isn't right. What dark secrets lie behind her sudden reappearance? If you love unraveling true crime mysteries, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more stories like this. Emily's erratic behavior and hidden clues in her belongings only deepened the mystery. Cynthia Harris's suspicious actions suggested she knew more than she let on. Neighbors reported seeing a girl resembling Emily in the woods during her absence, but every lead seemed to end in eerie coincidences or dead ends. Public speculation grew: was the girl who returned really Emily? A breakthrough in the investigation revealed Emily had been involved in a dangerous cult during her disappearance. The cult leader, Daniel Fry, had manipulated Emily and others, subjecting them to years of psychological abuse and conditioning. The fear in Emily's eyes wasn't just from being lost, it was from the trauma of being controlled, isolated, and broken down. The forensic evidence confirmed her identity, but her fragmented memories left more questions than answers. The town of Pine Creek had its own dark secrets, and as the case unfolded, the community's role in the cult's activities came under scrutiny. Daniel Fry was arrested, but the deeper mystery of the cult's reach remained. The exposure of hidden connections within the town led to public outcry and distrust, forcing many to question how much they truly knew about their neighbors and the world they lived in. The story of Emily Lawson is one that shakes the foundation of what people believe about safety, about home, about identity itself. It's easy to assume that when a missing person is found, the nightmare ends. But sometimes, the real nightmare is just beginning. The Lawson family got their daughter back, but at what cost? The truth that came with her return shattered everything they thought they knew. It forced them to question not only Emily's experiences but their entire town, their neighbors, the very people they had trusted. How long had this been happening? Who else knew? And worse, who else had been taken? Cases like Emily's reveal something disturbing about human nature: people only see what they want to see. The town of Pine Creek, for years, believed their community was safe, believed their children were protected, believed a girl's disappearance was either a tragic accident or a random crime. But the truth had been hiding in plain sight. And even when Emily returned, the town was still split between believing her and doubting her. Why? Because the truth was too unsettling to face. It was easier to dismiss her inconsistencies, to blame memory loss, to say she was confused, rather than admit that something truly monstrous had been going on right under their noses. Emily herself had become a puzzle. She was back, but she wasn't the same. The girl who had once laughed at the dinner table, played in the backyard, and walked home from school like any other child, was gone. In her place was someone who spoke in half-truths, who hesitated before answering simple questions, who flinched at shadows no one else could see. Was it trauma? Was it brainwashing? Or was it something even deeper, something she had chosen not to say? The people closest to her, the ones who should have been relieved to have her back, couldn't ignore the feeling that Emily was still missing in some way. This case forces one to think about the true impact of prolonged trauma. A person can physically return, but does that mean they're truly home? What happens to a mind that has spent years being controlled, manipulated, reshaped into something else? Can they ever fully reclaim who they were? Or is the damage permanent? The town of Pine Creek will never be the same, and neither will Emily. And then there's the bigger question. If Emily could disappear without a trace, if a whole town could miss the signs, if an entire system could fail her, how many others have been lost the same way? How many people are still out there, waiting to be found, waiting for someone to notice that they're gone? What would you do if someone you loved came back after years, but they weren't the same? How far would you go for the truth? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and if you haven't already, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping true crime stories. There are more cases out there, more mysteries waiting to be uncovered. And sometimes, the most terrifying stories aren't the ones we haven't heard, they're the ones we choose not to believe. If this story gripped you, if it made you question the things we often take for granted, safety, trust, the people around us, then make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another case like this. These stories are real. They happen in small towns, in big cities, in places just like where you live. There are more mysteries out there. More cases waiting to be uncovered. More questions that demand answers. Stay tuned for our next investigation, where we take you into another chilling, true crime case that will make you rethink everything you thought you knew. Thank you for watching. Stay safe. Stay aware. And always question the truth.